I'm so excited to announce that it is officially here. Real Food for Fertility, my brand new book that I co-authored with Lily Nichols. If you're ready to embark on the incredible journey of motherhood, there's no time like the present to prepare your body for the most vital role it will ever play, the creation of new life. In Real Food for Fertility, we explore the power of nutrition to optimize your fertility and ensure a healthy start for your future child. But this book isn't just about nutrition. We delve into topics like the menstrual cycle, fertility awareness, birth control, stress management, toxins, artificial reproductive technology, and the most common reproductive health challenges affecting your fertility. Let Real Food for Fertility be your roadmap and trusted companion as you take the first step toward building your family. In a world where more couples are facing fertility challenges, your nutrition and lifestyle choices can make all the difference. Head over to realfoodforfertility.com for additional details. You can grab a copy of our book on Amazon. We currently have our paperback and ebook versions, and of course, we will be working on our audiobook version in the near future, and we'll keep you posted as to when that is available. So again, realfoodforfertility.com, and let's go ahead and jump into today's episode. This is the Fertility Friday podcast, episode number 516. Today, I have an interesting study to share with you. I've spoken about this study many times. I've wrote about this study in the Fifth Vital Sign. And so I thought it would be a perfect follow-up to last week's rant about the Washington Post article. So in today's research series episode, I'm sharing a study with you in a new episode of the FAMM Research Series. And the name of the study is Characteristics of Women Who Experience Mood and Sexual Side Effects with Use of Hormonal Contraception. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so I'm actually going to read a short excerpt from the Fifth Vital Sign. And so this was in chapter 7, the pill chapter. In a study published in the Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology, Canada, the objective is listed as follows, quote, to describe the characteristics of women who experience sexual and mood side effects associated with use of hormonal contraception and to compare them with women who do not, end quote. So this is essentially the heart of what I want to talk about today. I found this study to be really interesting because of what the researchers have deemed important, because of what they've chosen to study. So they've identified a problem. And the problem is that a high percentage of women are discontinuing their use of hormonal birth control. In fact, the statistics are around 50%. So in this particular study, they recruited 1,300 women, a little over than 1,300 women. Average age was 28. And of these women who had previously used contraception, so they said 978 of them had previously used hormonal contraception. And of these women, 51% said that they had at least one mood-related side effect, and 38% said they had at least one sexual side effect. So this study was a survey study, and they had these women report on what they had experienced on birth control. So 51% had at least one mood side effect. Now, in the study, the body of the study, they cite other research, and this is important as well. So I'm going to share some of these stats with you and then get back to the point, which I think, my goodness. Okay. In the general population of women of reproductive age who have ever used contraception, 29% say they had discontinued oral contraceptives because of dissatisfaction with the method. Okay, I'm reading from the study. In the 2002 Canadian contraception study, 59% of women had changed their method of contraception, and 20% of these women had switched because of the side effects. Okay, so they're just citing some background information here. I'm going to continue and read a different section here. A study of 79 women in stable committed relationships found that only 38% had continued oral contraceptive use 1 year later. 47% had discontinued, and 14% had switched to another preparation. Okay, so literally they're telling you that when they look at women who have started a new oral contraceptive, 1 year later, only 38% are still using it. Okay. And they're saying 47% had stopped entirely and 14% had switched to a different option. They go on to say that emotional side effects, worsening of premenstrual syndrome, decreased frequency of sexual thoughts, and decreased psychosexual arousability accounted for 87% of cases. So that's a combination of emotional side effects, different symptoms, and then sexual side effects as well. So this is how they start. This is the background that they're providing. And this is similar to some of the information I shared in the fifth vital sign, which is that when you actually look at the statistics of women who are taking contraceptives and how satisfied, you could say, they are with their experience, what you find is that a high percentage of women are actually not satisfied. They are experiencing a variety of side effects, particularly mood and sexual side effects. I mean, there are other side effects, but those are some of the extremely common ones. And another extremely common side effect that women experience would be unscheduled bleeding. So depending on the type of hormonal contraceptive, particularly the IUD is more prone to this side effect. And that would represent another reason why many women are unsatisfied with their experience on hormonal contraceptives. And so with that in mind, I mean, when you hear that, you would think, okay, this is a problem. Look at how many women are experiencing a negative or having a negative experience on contraceptives. I mean, it's like 50%. And look how few women compared to who started on the contraceptives are still taking it. And granted, yes, there are different reasons why someone is going to stop taking contraceptives. A percentage of those women are probably wanting to conceive, and maybe a percentage of them, whatever. Like there's other reasons why people are discontinuing. It's not only because of side effects. But in the one study that they quoted here, it was 87% of those women reported that they had stopped because of side effects specifically. So even though you have many women discontinuing for other reasons, this represents a significant issue. So from my perspective, when I'm thinking about empowering women and having positive experiences and wanting to improve the health and just overall experience of women as a whole, I see this and I think to myself, okay, well, if I produced a product that caused, this high degree of dissatisfaction and this significant side effect profile, then at some point I would think to myself, what can I do to improve the product, right? What can I do to improve the experience of women? Is there anything that we could do to change the formulation? Is there a different approach we could take? What are our options here, right? I feel like that's a reasonable possibility for how we'd be looking at the situation. But the reason that I'm talking about this study today, and the reason that I believe that it's a good follow-up to the Washington Post study, is because that's not the angle the researchers are taking, actually. They're taking the angle that they want to describe the characteristics of women who experience sexual and mood side effects. And compare them to women who do not. And the reason that they want to do that is because they want to find out what is wrong with the women who are experiencing the side effect. Like, do they have a hormonal sensitivity? They're basically, and this could be how I'm reading it. I mean, I was already irritated, right, when I saw the title. So obviously, I'm maybe not objective here. But what I'm saying though, is that the question that they're asking, and when you read the study, like what they're getting at is that we want to figure out what are the particular qualities and characteristics of women who complain about side effects. Is there something about them that we can learn? Because I feel like this invalidates their experience to some degree, because they're not asking what's wrong with this contraceptive. They're saying, well, some women are experiencing these side effects, so what's wrong with them, right? there's got to be some differences between the women who are complaining about the side effects and the women who aren't. And if we could find out what that is, then we could kind of better market, and we could kind of like nuance our, like there's no thought process with this particular study of making any changes at all to the medication. It's almost like the bottom baseline assumption is that the medication is perfect. And it's just the women. There's just something wrong with these ones. Who are the ones that are complaining? Let's figure that out. Let's figure out if they are from a certain ethnic group, if they're a certain age and economic status, what is their education level? What's going on with these women? Because if we can figure that out, then maybe we can better, market this and better sell it, because obviously there's nothing wrong with the actual medication. So that is maybe not the full story, but when I'm looking at this study and their objectives, I find it very peculiar that they're taking this strategy and approach of trying to determine what are the characteristics of the women who complain in particular, so we can single them out and figure out if there's any similarities. Again, in the interest of scientific study, I'm not saying that there's anything inherently wrong with doing that. I'm just saying that I am a little bit put off by the fact that that's what they're doing. And if we go back to the Washington Post article and essentially what that individual was saying, they're saying that anybody who talks against birth control, who isn't a doctor, basically isn't allowed to do it. If you don't have a medical degree, you should just shut up and just not even talk about it, because you're clearly not qualified. And all these crazy women who are going to all these, uneducated influencers who are telling all this stuff about the side effects or whatever, they were acting in that article as if the side effects weren't real. But because the side effects are real, when you read the article, you see that it's very difficult for them to pretend like all of these side effects aren't real. They're not citing any research. They're not talking to women about their experiences. They're essentially invalidating the experiences of the women themselves and criticizing anybody who talks about the pill as if it's just hocus pocus crazy stuff, as if all of these so-called influencers are just making stuff up and trying to discourage women from using the pill for no reason. Like, we're just out here like, we want to take your birth control because we don't really have a reason. We just want to take it, right? It makes no sense. People wouldn't be talking about the pill critically if there wasn't a reason. And all you have to do, if you're ever in a group, you probably have, of like 3 or more women, all you have to do is ask them about the pill. If you have friends, girlfriends, wives, I don't know. It's just so crazy to me that this is controversial, like talking about side effects, because this research that I've just shared with you so far already shows you that a high percentage of women experience side effects. So obviously everybody doesn't, but a high percentage. And so again, my take on it is that why are we trying to figure out what's wrong with women? Okay, so moving on, so I don't get lost in that particular section. So they went ahead, they did the study, they surveyed all these women who had previously used hormonal contraceptives. And what they did was they gathered as much information and data about these women as possible so that they could try to identify any potential trends of the women in particular who did have an issue with contraception. So just to give you a sense of it, they took the ethnicity of the women, they took their socioeconomic status, education level. So they're just trying to determine some of the characteristics of these women and see if there's any trends, like I said. So here's one little excerpt from the study. Women who complained of sexual side effects were more likely to also complain of mood and physical side effects. Women who complained of mood side effects were more likely to be younger, unmarried, never had children before, Caucasian or South Asian, and presenting for IUD insertion rather than for primary care or abortion. So that's just a little excerpt, but basically they're identifying, okay, what is similar about these women? What can we identify? And then they go on to discuss what they feel that the findings, mean. And they say women who complain of mood or sexual side effects with use of hormonal contraception may have different physiological reactions to hormones. In a previous study, East Asian women had a lower rate of mood and sexual side effects than Caucasian and South Asian women. So they're saying, okay, so we're seeing a bit of a difference in different populations. And so maybe it's related to ethnic differences between groups. Like maybe certain ethnic groups have a higher sensitivity to hormones. Maybe they process the hormones a little differently. And so they're kind of saying, maybe that's the reason. So another thing that they suggest is, our finding that women who were more educated and unmarried complained more of sexual side effects may be related to higher expectations related to sexual pleasure. So they're kind of like, they don't really know, but they're like, okay, well, we saw that the women who had higher levels of education and who weren't married, they tended to complain more about these sexual side effects. So maybe that's related to their expectations of. So it's interesting because, again, this is for anyone who thinks research is infallible. When you read a lot of it, it's super interesting because who writes research papers? People, humans. People who have, their own biases, and no one knows everything. So when you have the data, the author of the study has to say, okay, well, this is my reason of what I think it could be contributing to this, And so you can see that they're kind of like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And I'll just continue. So they say that in a different study of women in Scotland and the Philippines, the Scottish women had a higher baseline rate of sexual thoughts and a higher rate of sexual side effects from hormonal contraception. This could be a psychological effect. So it could be in their head, but it may also be related to cultural and religious issues leading to lower expectations about sex in the women from the Philippines. So they're, again, they're kind of conjecturing and saying, okay, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. This whole study, as I read through the study, I feel like my blood just was like boiling little by little. Again, there's nothing wrong with scientific inquiry, but I find this whole premise of trying to figure out like, what is wrong with the women who are complaining about this stuff? Like, what are their characteristics and traits? If we could just identify those, then I don't know, like we just don't have to look at the drug at all because obviously the drug is infallible. The drug is great. What's wrong is the women, that is just, it's so offensive. I think it's really important to understand that this is like peer-reviewed published research. So there's nothing in this kind of line of inquiry that is out of the ordinary. This is what we're dealing with. This level of just nonsense. Like this is what we're dealing with as women. When we go to try to seek support from health professionals, this is the level of their inquiry. When we complain about the side effects, they're kind of just like, oh, here we go again, because they don't seem to think that the complaint is valid. And again, this ties directly to the Washington Post article, which I'm still talking about, because if you read that article, they're not even concerned about the fact that millions of women all over the world are complaining about the side effects. They're not concerned that women have tried to go to their healthcare providers who don't listen to them, and then they seek support anywhere else, anyone who will listen to them. And women form groups all over the place, right? We form groups online. Sometimes it's only those online communities where women can actually get information and referrals for medical providers who will listen to them, right? So, but again, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a whole profession that when you complain about the side effects, they're rolling their eyes like, oh, what is wrong with these people? If only they could just like suck it up, because these are the most effective methods, right? There's nothing wrong with the pill. It's you. Popping into today's episode with an incredible resource to share. Today's episode is brought to you by my top resource for women's health professionals, How to Interpret Virtually Any Chart Your Client Throws at You. Our new ebook breaks down complex chart interpretation into an easy step-by-step process. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/chart to snag your complimentary copy today. That's fertilityfriday.com/chart. Now let's go ahead and jump back into today's episode. All right, I will continue. I'm just going to look for a couple other I had highlighted a couple of things. So to kind of wrap up my line of discussion here, there was also, it might not be the most exciting thing, but I did highlight in the study where it said IUD users reported the highest rate of hormone-related side effects, and it is likely that the choice to use an IUD may often be related to previous problems with other contraceptive methods. So this is a useful finding because I think that makes a whole lot of sense. So when you have women who have a negative experience with hormonal contraceptives, what happens is that, women still need birth control. So if you try, X brand and you don't have a good experience, many women will then get off of X brand and try Y brand and try, A, B, C, whatever. So I've spoken to many women who have a negative effect and then they try different brands and then it doesn't really work for them. Like they try one, it doesn't work that well, try another one, it doesn't work that well. And then eventually they try something different. So they'll try the hormonal IUD. So I do think that it is possible that yes, women who tend toward the IUD, maybe there's a higher proportion of them who did have negative side effects with other hormonal contraceptives. And this is kind of like one of their last ditch attempts at trying to make it work, right? So again, not saying that there's anything wrong with data and information and even asking these questions, but I just, the question that's missing in my mind is, well, what's wrong with the pill? And where's the study that shows like, what can we do to improve it? The formulation for the pill, although there have been changes throughout the years and there are different generations of these estrogen containing hormones, largely the formulations are very, very similar. Although they've made slight tweaks to the different specific synthetic hormone formulation, the premise is the same. And so, 60 plus years later, we're still looking at a very similar contraceptive option. And I would argue that given the high volume of women who are not satisfied with the contraceptives and their side effects, we should be looking for another alternative, but that doesn't seem to happen. We just put the same type of formulation in a different outfit. So we administer it in a patch, we stick it in an IUD, we put it in an implant. And yes, the formulations are different, but essentially we take the same types of things and just put them in a different outfit, put it in a ring that can be inserted in the vagina. So in the fifth vital sign, I did put an extended quote because I wanted the readers to see the conclusion of this study, because I find the conclusion to be like, it's like the icing on the cake, but it's like not a tasty cake. So I'm going to read the whole conclusion because why not? Understanding more about which women report mood and sexual side effects with hormonal contraception may be useful when counseling women about contraception, obviously. It is likely that both physiological susceptibility and psychosocial and cultural issues affect which women complain of these side effects. It is important that women choose contraception that is not only effective, but also does not complicate their emotional and sexual lives. They go on to say, and this is like my favorite part, air quotes, it is a major challenge for clinicians to provide the information women need to make choices without unduly discouraging them from using the most effective methods. More research is needed to determine the best way to inform women about potential risks and benefits of hormonal contraception. This is the whole reason that this study irritates me. Maybe not the whole reason, but a big part of it. The conclusion. So after all of this discussion that we've had today, these researchers did surveys on, over 1,000 women, right? They're asking all these questions or gathering all this data. And out of all of that, they conclude that it is difficult for clinicians to provide information to women about contraceptives without also discouraging them about using the most effective methods. The biggest problem here is that it's hard for clinicians because if they come out and tell women about the side effects, then, oh my gosh, they might discourage them from using it. And we don't want that because, again, the pill is infallible. There's nothing wrong with the pill, obviously. So what are we going to do? Like, how do we help these clinicians to talk to their patients about the most effective methods of birth control, honestly, without discouraging them? Are you kidding me? right? Like, are you kidding me? This is the biggest problem. The biggest problem isn't the millions of women who experience anxiety and depression and low libido and sexual dysfunction and, clitoral shrinkage and vulvodynia. I've done podcast episodes because the pill profoundly decreases free testosterone, and therefore it has this negative effect on libido for many women. Obviously, all women don't have the same effect. What I will say is all women do experience a profound decrease in testosterone when they take oral contraception. So if you were to do a blood draw across the board, all women are going to have a significantly decreased amount of free testosterone. And that's due to the influx of synthetic estrogen when you're taking this hormone cocktail. So having that large influx of synthetic estrogen causes the sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, to essentially attract and bind a significant amount of the free testosterone. And there's also a reduction in the amount of testosterone that we produce. So across the board, this effect is there, but then how it plays out, like what you're specifically going to experience is going to be different from woman to woman. So if you speak to different women, some women are going to say, oh no, my libido was fine. But if we were to do a blood draw, like you said, we're going to see that this effect on the testosterone is there across the board. But to put it, to get back to the point, this is, from my perspective, the problem. The problem is that women are using this contraception and they're having negative experiences. And although not all women have negative experiences, a high percentage do. So much so that half of the women are coming off of it within a year because they just don't like how they feel. And instead of us having a medical system that's actually concerned about what these women are experiencing and validating it, saying this is a problem. We should actually try to improve the delivery of this. We should try to improve the formulation. Is there anything we can do? They're saying basically that this method is effective and these women have to take it. So how do we present them with the information about it without discouraging them? Because at the end of the day, we need them to take the medication. So, for anyone who doesn't know or didn't know what you're up against, for anyone who isn't aware of why it's so difficult to go to your medical doctor and express that you've had side effects and have this person take you seriously, as opposed to just telling you, oh, well, let's just get you on another one, or that's normal, that don't worry about it, just keep taking it, in a few months it'll get better, whatever the case is. If you've ever wondered why that is the reality of it, if you personally had this experience where you've taken contraceptives and you did not have a good experience, you went to your care provider, but you just didn't really get the response you were looking for, whether the person didn't really believe what you said or downplayed you or just encouraged you to keep taking the thing or to take a different thing, maybe now you can kind of see that this is the underlying, at least from my perspective, the underlying assumption of our healthcare system. This is why it is the way it is. Basically, this is the pill. The pill is great. The side effects are minor, according to them. And it's a safe and reversible form of contraception, right? And so just take it. And if you don't like this one, just take this other one, right? We have all these different formulations, right? Essentially the same thing in a different outfit. So if you don't like this, if you don't like formulation A, just take formulation B, or if you don't like B, take C or whatever. But either way, take it. And then if you say, okay, but I'm not having a good experience, I don't respond well to hormones, I want to do a non-hormonal method, they tell you, oh, those don't work. Those are totally ineffective and it's irresponsible for you to even consider that. And anyone who talks about it, right, is an uneducated, blah, 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 whatever. Anyways, I wanted to share this study because I just feel like it shows you, again, what we're up against. It shows you what we're dealing with. It sheds a lot of light on why women have the experiences that they do in medical offices. And I think one of the challenges as well is that not all women, since not all women experience negative side effects, there's a lot of women out there who get really upset when people talk about the side effects because they personally haven't experienced it. So there's a lot of women out there who, when you talk about this low libido, anxiety, this kind of stuff, the depression, whatever, and you talk about the side effects, a lot of women out there will say, okay, well, you're trying to take away my birth control and this is about reproductive rights. And by me talking about these things, it's not me trying to take away birth control. I took birth control and hundreds of millions of women take birth control around the world. So it's not about that. For me, it's about education. We just have the right to know. We have the right to know because since half according to the research of women who are going on contraceptives are dissatisfied enough that they're coming off of it within a year. We need to be educated about the side effects so that at least we can know what to expect. At least we can know if we're experiencing panic attacks or low mood, depression, low libido, painful sex, some of the common side effects women experience. At least we know it could be related to the pill. When we don't talk about the side effects, women experience this stuff and they internalize it. They think it's them. They think there's something wrong with them. I've spoken to so many women who experienced mood side effects on the pill. They didn't feel like themselves. They felt depressed. They felt even just like having a low, flat emotion, no affect, no ups and downs, feeling numb, that kind of stuff. And they, especially women who go on the pill at a young age in their teens, they tend to then think that, okay, this is just me. This is how I am. I just don't have a happy personality. I'm just a depressed person. I've heard people say that. And if no one tells you that these are common side effects of the pill, then you just take that on and continue to have this negative experience. And in some cases, maybe switching to a different one would help. Or maybe being educated about the different options. At least you have choices. Maybe you take it for a defined period of time when there's a specific period in your life where you really need to rely on this type of birth control. But if you have the knowledge and information, you have the option to try something different when you're a little bit older, when you're in a little bit different of a situation. So I'm going to leave that here. I think that this was a decent review of the study. Hopefully not too ranty, but like ranty enough. And I think that, again, it was a good follow-up to the Washington Post article. I obviously have strong opinions about this. I wouldn't say that my perspective is necessarily the right one, but I think that it's useful to share it because it's different to the perspective that you'll hear out there in the health world from medical professionals. I do think that medical professionals are not experts in every possible thing. I think that we all could benefit from reading more research and seeing what's really going on. And I don't think that just because somebody does not have a medical degree, they shouldn't be allowed to read research papers and talk about the findings. I think obviously women are having negative experiences with these contraceptive methods, and we need the opportunity to be able to talk about it. We need the opportunity to look at what the research actually says about these contraceptive methods so we can be more informed about the different side effects, the different options, what's really going on here. And I think it's unfortunate that there's such a bias, a pro-pill bias in the medical community that they're not really willing to talk honestly and frankly about the side effects because they're concerned that they're going to discourage women from using it. I think that is a terrible way to go because women, we should be thought of as smart individuals who can make informed choices for ourselves. We shouldn't be pushed into using something because our health professionals feel this fatherly desire to tell us that it's the right thing for us. At the end of the day, I have the right to identify the positives and negatives about anything that I'm thinking about doing and making that decision for myself. I shouldn't have this paternalistic medical system telling me that this is what I should be doing because they feel it's right for me. And there's something wrong with me, and that's why I'm complaining about my side effects. My goodness. So if you enjoyed today's episode and you want to share, the link to share is fertilityfriday.com/516. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, whenever you're tuning into the show. And of course, as always, until next time, be well and happy charting. And that's a wrap. If you're loving our FAMM Research Series, then I know you'll love our Fertility Awareness Mastery Mentorship Program. It's a 9-month immersive experience that will completely transform the way you work with clients, allowing you to not only teach fertility awareness to your clients, but to use the menstrual cycle as a vital sign and diagnostic tool in your women's health practice. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLive to join the waiting list and be the first to know when registration opens up again. There's no program like this offered anywhere. Transform your practice in 9 months. Head over to fertilityfriday.com/FAMMLive.